Here now is Solutionaries.
I'm Lewis Bolden, and you're watching Solutionaries, a show that goes beyond the news of the day and spotlights the people working to solve big issues. Human trafficking is the business of stealing freedom for profit. In some cases, sex traffickers force victims into selling their bodies. In other cases, people are exploited for work, known as labor trafficking. It is modern-day slavery, a crime happening all over the world and right here in the U.S. Thankfully, there are groups trying to help these workers find a way out.
I started working with him in 2010 in Nigeria. I work as house help. I do everything in the house, take care of the kids. He was a good man. Everything was good.
When did he start talking to you about coming to the United States?
He never said anything. He just said, go get your passport. You're going to the United States, and that's it. I never knew it was going to be permanent.
Blessing Daniel is talking about her former boss, actual Nigerian prince Eze Matamir. And the court records we went through show that he brought her here on a tourist visa and put her to work at his house in a Houston suburb.
She was working there, essentially 24/7 for her waking hours. Instead of paying her wages like you should normally, he told her that he would be sending money to her family in Nigeria. My name is Dokwang Daniel Pham. I am a staff attorney for the Equal Justice Center. We help people who have suffered some sort of issue in the workplace, be it wage theft or employment discrimination, and we help them get justice against the employers that have wronged them.
There was no promises here, but there was promises back in Nigeria before coming, like taking care of my child, my daughter, paying her school fees, getting me a hair salon here.
You had to leave your daughter?
Yes, I didn't come with her.
How old is she?
She was 8 as of that time.
That must have been hard.
One of the hardest things ever. Yes.
What did they tell you would happen if you left?
I don't know, I want to say that.
Labor trafficking is the use of force, fraud, and coercion for the purpose of obtaining someone for modern-day slavery, for debt bondage or forced labor.
Human trafficking isn't just kidnapping. It isn't just abduction. Human trafficking usually is done by someone who has a close relationship or kinship to you and is taking advantage of that. My name is Samantha Ledesma, and I am with YMCA International, which is a part of YMCA Greater Houston.
My name is Elise Grissmeyer. I'm the Associate Legal Director for the Cabrini Center for Immigration Legal Services for Catholic Charities. We work exclusively with foreign national survivors of labor trafficking and sex trafficking. And I think when we see stories about trafficking in the media, they tend to take either the form of smuggling, immigrants found in the back of an 18-wheeler, or they take the shape of sex trafficking for young American girls. And both of those things are so narrow in focus that we miss how broad trafficking is. That trick we see is typically, come work for me, I'll pay you a minimum wage waitressing job. And then you get here and you find out it's something else.
A lot of these labor trafficking cases can be with foreign nationals, with somebody who is undocumented in the U.S.
While many victims of trafficking are undocumented, there are those, like Daniel's, who come to the U.S. on tourist visas. Then there are those who come here on worker visas.
So the H-2A and H-2B program specifically are brought in to fill gaps in employment here in the United States. They can apply for visas to bring people into the country. Those visas, however, are tied to that specific employer. So there's this huge power imbalance between the employer and employees. And if they complain about working conditions or hours or the type of work that they're being forced to do, they know that their employer could have them deported at any moment.
So whether it's psychological or physical, if that person feels that they cannot leave that labor situation, that work, that turns into labor trafficking.
A lot of abuse crops up in that system that could be easily resolved if we gave immigrants more flexibility to work within that same field, but the ability to change employers.
The United States allows 88 countries to apply for H-2 visas. Between 2018 and 2020, more than 15,800 people were identified by the human trafficking hotline as labor trafficking victims. Nearly 3,700 were holding an H-2 visa. Again, People with these visas cannot change jobs to escape their situation. In Daniel's case, it took a call to get her out.
I was going to church at first. I started to make friends, and when they realized I was making friends, they stopped me from going to church. I never had a phone. They never got me one. They said I had no one to call.
When her family friends eventually learned that she was in Houston and working for this Nigerian politician, they basically asked, "We want to see you, we want to spend time with you," and she wasn't able to do that under her employer's orders. Eventually they figured, something might be wrong, and they essentially called the police.
Do you remember the day that the police showed up at your house?
Just like right now. I would never forget that.
Were you scared going with the police?
At first, yes.
What did you think was going to happen?
I thought I was going to be deported. The fear in me, like, I had no idea what was going on. They said it was human trafficking, and I had no idea I was going through that.
So a person who is a victim of either sex trafficking or labor trafficking, which is our expertise, can sue their employer and recoup damages related to the mental anguish that they've suffered and the wages that they should have gotten. So it was the YMCA International, working on the immigration half of Ms. Daniels' case, that eventually referred her to us to do a civil lawsuit.
How was that settled?
It settled for a decent amount of money.
We did try to speak with the prince about this case. His attorney emailed us a statement reading, "The prince was traumatized by the allegations and he filed a counterclaim for defamation." They both ended up settling and closing their claims against each other.
With the resources that law enforcement has, it's still a difficult case to prosecute. Kenneth Magidson, former U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Texas.
Is it easier to go after the sex trafficking, because that usually involves multiple women with more clear-cut signs of other crimes being committed, versus the one person who is a domestic servant?
The federal resources in law enforcement are always stretched thin because there's so many demands upon what kind of cases they take. Even in the sense of forced labor, they're always going to be looked at in terms of multi-state investigations. In other words, is this something that's being done by a cartel? Is this something that's being done by organized crime? But we have to put the infrastructure in to handle the immigration problem. And right now we don't have that infrastructure. We just have law enforcement at the border trying to stop people.
That infrastructure could come in the form of two paths. Both require bipartisan support at our nation's capital, which is hard to accomplish these days. Remember those visas. The first path would require a change to how employers who sponsor immigrant workers are properly vetted or monitored. It would also give visa holders the opportunity to change jobs if their employer was abusing their position. Nationally, the second path lands on enforcing current laws, and it would require a joint effort from law enforcement, federal agencies, state and city leaders, and grassroots or nonprofit advocates.
There's also a huge coalition, which is the Houston Rescue and Restore Coalition, that has over 50 organizations working together to really fix these gaps in services.
So for whoever is going through what I went through, I want to say speak to somebody. You can always trust someone out there. Speak. If you have opportunity, make that one phone call, and that's it.
Closer to home, the Florida Alliance to End Human Trafficking is a nonprofit created by lawmakers in 2019 to help trafficking victims. They show people how to spot the signs and know where to report them. You can read more about it on clickorlando.com. Ahead on Solutionaries, we switch gears and look at two different schemes targeting your money.
First thing I said was hello, and all I heard was a noise on the other end of the line.
Welcome back. I'm Louis Bolden. Lithium-ion batteries, they power everything from cell phones to scooters and electric cars. Unfortunately, these batteries have a history of overheating and catching fire. Let's take a look at one firefighting technique that's already getting results.
Oh, it is a Tesla.
The technology that has changed that's forcing fire departments to get away from fire hoses and move to blankets?
Electric vehicles definitely have brought a new challenge.
The problem is that the batteries, they're an energy storage system, so they contain a huge amount of energy into a really small space. And then they're protected very well inside of the vehicle. So in order to get access to those batteries is what causes all of the problems with extinguishing the fire.
So to put things in perspective, the amount of water coming out of hoses like this for a typical car fire, about 500 gallons. For EV fires, again, about 30,000 gallons of water.
So we've had to develop some new practices in fighting these fires. The standard way to extinguish a fire, we either have to remove the fuel, we have to remove the heat, which is what we use water for, or we have to remove the oxygen. So that's the basis of the fire blanket, is we're creating an air pocket around that vehicle. We make it as small as possible, and once that oxygen has been consumed, then that helps to prevent that fire from spreading or getting any worse. If we're using that blanket on an electric vehicle, the minimum's an hour that's going to take to help prevent or to stop that fire and burning process. The blankets that we have are a one-time use blanket, so we're going to secure the blanket around the vehicle and it's going to stay with that car permanently. So while it's getting towed away, once it's in the tow yard, that blanket's going to stay with the vehicle because problems have been found where electric vehicles start back on fire 2 or 3 days later and then cause a whole nother problem in the vehicle storage yards.
Fire blankets are one solution, but what about preventing these fires in the first place? A new 6 investigation reveals there are no state regulations for safely storing lithium-ion batteries. Solutionaries correspondent Eric Sandoval found out when that could change.
Structure fire, emergency.
The fires have already destroyed property and claimed lives. In January, these flames consumed a garbage truck in Seminole County. Another fire killed a man in Orange County over the summer and destroyed this Tesla on the 417. And in New York, 4 people died from this fire at an e-bike repair shop. All of these fires caused by lithium-ion batteries.
It scares the daylights out of me.
That's Joanne Rice. She's the director of the Florida State Fire Marshal's office. We caught up with her here at the State Fire College in Ocala, where crews from all over the country and even as far away as Brazil came to learn how to put these fires out.
You don't have the tools. Are you going to get the tools?
We're getting the tools. And the fact is there's no one tool that does the job.
We watched as crews used special hoses and huge fire blankets to help smother electric car fires. Now, Rice says preventing these fires is just as important as fighting them. But she admits there are no state regulations when it comes to safely storing lithium-ion batteries.
We have codes and standards in place, and most of those codes run several years behind.
Those codes are recommended by a group of fire professionals with the International Code Council. And New 6 has uncovered new recommendations specifically for safe lithium-ion battery storage are set to be released next year. And it is then the Florida State Legislature could take those recommendations and update the state fire code.
Now, Joanne Rice says right now they're looking at creating new rules that would basically allow fire departments to create their own regulations on how these batteries are being stored. But you know, she says this all boils down to individuals doing the right thing, and that includes using the correct power cords, not charging your devices overnight, and most importantly, making sure you have a plan just in case a fire does break out. For Solutionaries, I'm Eric Sandoval.
And now to one of the fastest growing types of fraud in the country and here in Florida, Bitcoin scams. More than 100 people reported being ripped off in Brevard County, and one of those victims is sharing her story, hoping others will not make the same mistake.
I trusted my friend. I've known him since grade school.
Brevard County realtor Isabel Castro painfully discovered it wasn't her friend at the other end of her Instagram message who had urged her to buy cryptocurrency, Bitcoin.
Showed my profile, the deposits, and then they would go up, but then I couldn't pull it out.
Anyone can buy digital currency online. Bitcoin is the most popular, but these days more and more people are buying Bitcoin at their local pharmacy or gas station. And most of the people using these new age ATMs are buying Bitcoin not for an investment, but because they're being scammed and don't even know it.
It's huge. It's one of the fastest growing frauds.
Agent Justin Wood is the lead cryptocurrency investigator at the Brevard County Sheriff's Office Economic Crimes Unit.
The coach told her, send Bitcoin to this address and you'll see, a great amount of return on your investment.
And you did put in more.
I did, and then until I realized, okay, this is going to go on forever. I'm never going to see this again.
How much did you put in?
$9,000.
$9,000.
Yeah.
And you thought you'd never see that money again?
No.
So Agent Wood followed the funds.
And we can see that they're sent to a series of different digital addresses here. And ultimately, you can see them, they all funnel into one digital address.
Agent Wood sent the crypto exchange company a search and seizure notice to freeze the funds and get back Isabel's money.
We've done probably about 100 cases.
It took a while. It was a process, but they successfully retrieved all the funds.
Agent Wood is one of the few investigators in Florida who've trained with the Secret Service at their digital currency course in Alabama. He alone has closed 80 cryptocurrency cases here in Brevard County.
In the past 3 years, we've successfully seized and recovered about $700,000 worth of cryptocurrency.
So what do you do? Well, that old saying is so relevant here. If it sounds too good to be true, like an easy high return on investment, it usually is too good to be true. If somebody's scaring you into buying crypto, that's obviously a red flag. And you know what Isabel told us? She wishes she had picked up the phone and talked to that friend and not just communicate through messaging. Agent Wood is limited on how much he can recover by how cooperative the crypto exchanges are. Some cooperate, some do not. And he's not arresting the scam artists. Most of them are out of the country, but he is stopping the flow of money to those scammers and getting that money back to the victims. For Solutionaries, I'm Eric Von Anken.
So in this story, picking up the phone and verifying the identity of this supposed friend would have prevented Isabel Castro from getting scammed. But what if the scammer calls you using your loved one's caller ID and using their voice? Investigator Mike Holfeld looks at how a technique called spouse spoofing has evolved.
There was a scuffling of sorts. It sounded like what I thought was my husband crying.
The hurried notes of account numbers and names are a vivid reminder of the frightening pre-dawn call from a stranger that convinced Sean, her husband, who was out of town on a business trip, was in danger.
He was demanding money to not harm my husband.
She asked we not use her last name, but she tells News 6 the name and number on her cell phone screen was definitely her husband's. A man on the other end was speaking rapid fire.
And I asked if my husband was okay. I asked if I could talk to him. This made him, more irate. I said, okay, I want to pay what he owes you. Just don't hurt him.
A total of just under $2,000 was wired via her Zelle account to a Valeria Lopez, a woman she'd never heard of.
So then you started playing detective. Where was your husband?
I have an app on my phone that shows where me and my husband and my 3 kids are. And so I looked him up and it showed that he was at his parents' condo in Atlanta. And he's there and he's fine. And his phone is on his nightstand next to him.
And you realize, I've been hacked.
I've been scammed.
There had to have been a scam reason for using these numbers, right? For pretending to be a family member.
Alex Calici, CEO of UMail Incorporated, predicted the intent of spouse spoofing would be clear.
And we'll see scams specific to you've got a relationship with the person who called you.
That was April 2019, when News 6 reported a robocall case that first used this technique. John and Eileen Markham were the first couple to report what we would dub spouse spoofing. Back then, it tricked them into answering a robocall. But 4 years later, it's far more intimidating.
Well, what we're seeing right now, particularly from the Nigerians, is an uptick in this sort of call somebody late at night, act like there's a crisis, and try to get money transferred via Venmo and some of these other services.
Haywood Talcobe, CEO of LexisNexis Risk Solutions, says if Sean had a verbal password, that scheme would have been shut down in seconds.
Once she got the call, she should have just said, "Can you please tell me my family password? If you provide it to me, I will give you whatever you want."
These imposters are able to buy phone numbers on the dark web. So the takeaway from this story is this: have a family meeting, establish a password, so you're not the next victim. For Solutionaries, I'm Mike Holfeld.
You can find all of the stories featured in this episode on clickorlando.com and stream the latest videos for free on the new 6 Plus app for your smart TV. I'm your host, Lewis Bolden. Thanks for watching.